Nonsense. Spouting nonsense.
That whole nonsense. I think it's nonsense now because
Nonsense.
It's nonsense. Nonsense.
Nonsense.
Nonsense.
Nonsense. All nonsense. Complete and utter nonsense. Birther nonsense or nonsense. A lot of nonsense.
If this nonsense could be nonsense, same nonsense.
This type of nonsense, it's birther nonsense.
This is nonsense, is nonsense.
Nonsense is utter nonsense.
Religious nonsense.
And the birther nonsense. Well, the birther nonsense, this is just nonsense. Racially charged nonsense.
Nonsense.
The birther nonsense,
Which is nonsense.
all just nonsense. Type of nonsense. Nonsense.
Nonsense and
Nonsense.
Turn around for nonsense like
Nonsense. These nonsense.
religious nonsense of that nonsense.
This is nonsense.
Kind of nonsense.
Nonsense spent on this nonsense. Spiritorial nonsense. Stop this nonsense.
Old nonsense.
Study for being nonsense.
On nonsense.
Religion is nonsense.
Kind of be nonsense. All sorts of nonsense. It's obvious. Nonsense.
This case is nonsense.
Nonsense.
Conspiracy nonsense.
Is nonsense.
And nonsense
nonsense.
Being nonsense.
is all just nonsense.
Well, birther nonsense.
This nonsense.
Birther nonsense. The birther nonsense.
All of the nonsense
African American nonsense. All of the nonsense.
and nonsense.
Voodoo nonsense or
This nonsense.
Is nonsense.
nonsense type nonsense. It's nonsense. Media nonsense.